Across the world, there are places that shouldn't exist but do. Stone villages older than memory. Silent warriors carved from rock. Tiny artifacts that rewrite everything we thought we knew about the past. Each one whispers the same question. Who built these? And why? From the sands of forgotten temples to the frozen ruins of ancient homes, every discovery pulls us closer to a truth humanity once knew and somehow lost. Uncover the mysteries of our forgotten world. Subscribe and keep exploring. The Dolní Věstonice figurine, Ice Age ceramic mystery. In the quiet hills of the Czech Republic lies one of the most fascinating archaeological discoveries of the Ice Age. At a site near the village of Dolní Věstonice, archaeologists uncovered something extraordinary. A tiny ceramic figurine, shaped like a woman, fired in a kiln more than 25,000 years ago. This object, known as the Dolní Věstonice Venus, is not only the oldest known ceramic artifact in the world, but also one of the most mysterious. It forces us to rethink the history of art, technology, and belief. The figurine is small, just a few inches tall, but its significance is enormous. It depicts a woman with exaggerated features, large hips, a pronounced belly, and prominent breasts. The face is not detailed, the arms are thin, and the head is small compared to the body. Many Venus figurines from the Ice Age share these characteristics, but the Dolní Věstonice figure is special because of the material. It is not carved from stone or bone, but made of clay that was shaped by human hands and then fired. This makes it the earliest known use of ceramic technology. Thousands of years before pottery became widespread, before farming and permanent villages, people living in harsh Ice Age environments had already discovered how to transform clay with fire. The choice of form raises many questions. Why did they make this figurine? Was it symbolic? Was it used in rituals, carried as a charm, or kept as a sacred object? Archaeologists believe it may have been connected to fertility, given the emphasis on reproductive features. In a time when survival was precarious, fertility of humans, animals, and plants would have been a central concern. The site of Dolní Věstonice itself is remarkable. Excavations have revealed the remains of huts made from mammoth bones, hearths used for fire, and tools crafted from flint and ivory. It was clearly a place where Ice Age hunters and gatherers lived, worked, and perhaps gathered for larger communal events. Among these remains, the Venus figurine stands out as an object of thought, creativity, and intention beyond simple survival. What makes the figurine even more mysterious is the discovery of fingerprints baked into the clay. These ancient prints are thought to have belonged to a young person, perhaps a child or teenager, who helped mold the figurine. Imagine that for a moment, 25,000 years ago, a young hand pressing into clay, leaving a trace that still survives today. It is one of the most direct human connections we can have with the distant past. The figurine itself was not an isolated object. Other similar figurines have been found across Europe, from France to Siberia, suggesting a widespread tradition of symbolic female figures during the Ice Age. Each region had its variations, but the themes were consistent: fertility, survival, and the central role of women in human communities. But why ceramics? Most Venus figurines were carved from stone, bone, or ivory, durable materials. Clay is fragile, difficult to work with, and requires controlled fire to harden. The decision to use clay shows knowledge of heat and transformation. It suggests experimentation, trial and error, and an early form of technology that would not become common again for thousands of years. This raises another question. Was the use of ceramics in Dolní Věstonice a unique invention, a localized experiment that never spread widely, or were there other, undiscovered sites where similar practices took place? The figurine hints at possibilities far beyond what we currently know. When we think of Ice Age people, we often imagine them as focused entirely on survival. Hunting, gathering and staying warm in freezing climates. Yet the Daln Vestanius Venus reminds us that they were also thinkers, creators, and dreamers. They made art. They invested time and effort into symbolic objects that had meaning beyond the immediate needs of life. This tells us that culture, belief, and imagination have always been part of what it means to be human. The figurine's exaggerated features are often interpreted as a focus on fertility. In times of scarcity, ensuring the continuation of life would have been paramount. A figurine emphasizing fertility may have been a form of prayer, a ritual object, or a symbol of hope, but it could also have had other meanings we can no longer access. Perhaps it represented a mother figure, a clan ancestor, or a spiritual being. Without writing, we are left only to speculate. The survival of the figurine is itself miraculous. Made of clay, it could easily have been broken, lost, or eroded over millennia. That it remained buried and preserved until modern archaeologists uncovered it is extraordinary. It allows us to hold in our hands something shaped by people who lived more than 25 millennia ago, and to see directly their artistry, their choices, their fingerprints. The site of Dalny Vestinus also revealed evidence of ritual practices. Human burials, including the remains of a young woman buried with ceremonial items, suggest that this was more than a simple settlement. It was a place where people expressed beliefs about life, death, and the world beyond. The figurine fits into this context, reinforcing the idea that symbolism and ritual were central to Ice Age life. Archaeologists working at the site continue to find new details. Advanced techniques, such as microscopic analysis of the clay and 3D scanning of the figurine, reveal information about how it was shaped and fired. The clay was carefully selected, mixed with bone ash, and heated at controlled temperatures. This was not a simple accident of fire. It was intentional, skilled work. What is striking is that after Dalny Vestanci, ceramic technology largely disappears for thousands of years. It does not become widespread until much later, in the Neolithic, when farming communities began producing pottery. This makes the figurine even more of an anomaly. It is an outlier, a flash of innovation far ahead of its time. Some scholars suggest that the figurine may have been part of an experimental process, a kind of technological exploration that did not spread because conditions were not right. Others think it may have been a special ritual knowledge, passed within a small group, but not shared widely. Whatever the case, it challenges our assumptions about linear progress. Human history is not a straight line of constant advancement. It is full of starts, stops, experiments, and forgotten knowledge. For those visiting the figurine today in the museum, the sense of connection is profound. This small object, fragile and ancient, carries within it the thoughts, hopes, and hands of Ice Age people. It is more than an artifact, it is a bridge across time, reminding us of the creativity and humanity of our ancestors. The Dalny Vestanci Venus is a mystery not only because of its age and material, but because of what it represents. It speaks of a people who saw the world symbolically, who created art in the midst of survival, and who experimented with materials in ways that foreshadowed future technologies. It tells us that imagination, ritual, and the urge to create are as old as humanity itself. And when you think about it in the quiet of the night, the figurine becomes more than clay. It becomes a voice from the Ice Age, a reminder that even in the harshest conditions, humans sought beauty, meaning, and connection. It is an object both humble and profound, simple in form but vast in significance. The Dalny Vestinus Venus remains, small but powerful, carrying the mystery of a people who lived long before history began, yet whose creativity and spirit still reach us today. The dolmens of North Caucasus, stone tombs older than pyramids. Close your eyes and imagine the morning mist rolling slowly over the Caucasus Mountains. The air is cool, almost tasting of wet earth and pine needles. The wind moves gently through the valleys, carrying whispers of time long past. And there, half hidden in the hills, rise the dolmens. Stone chambers older than most civilizations we know, older than the pyramids of Egypt. Silent witnesses to countless centuries. They are heavy slabs of stone, placed with careful hands, standing firm while the world changes around them. Some stones are simple, others are carved with shallow grooves and circular holes, each shape deliberate, each placement intentional, though the meaning has long been lost to history. Step closer. Feel the earth beneath your feet, soft but firm. See the doorway, small and low, barely enough for a person to crawl through. It is a threshold between worlds, though which worlds we cannot say. Perhaps for the spirits to pass, perhaps for the living to leave offerings, perhaps for both. Thousands of these dolmens scatter across the North Caucasus. Some stand solitary on a ridge, facing the sunrise as if to greet each new day. Others form clusters in valleys, like small communities frozen in stone, each structure slightly different, but all part of a larger mysterious design. Rectangular, round, with capstones that weigh many tons. The builders knew balance, knew precision. The stones were quarried, shaped and moved over steep terrain, without wheels, without machinery, relying on strength, patience and knowledge we can barely imagine. Imagine the community, together, hauling stone, setting it in place, day after day, season after season. Imagine the pride, the care, the reverence. Inside the dolmen, the air is cooler, darker. Bones have been found here, sometimes alone, sometimes layered over generations. Fragments of pottery, tiny beads, shards of woven cloth, all speak of rituals, remembrance, care. Every dolmen is a small sanctuary, every slab a testament. And yet no inscriptions, no written stories. Only stone, shaping memory silently across the millennia. Imagine your fingers brushing the walls, smooth, cold, solid, carvings faintly etched, perhaps symbols of the sun, perhaps markings of seasons, perhaps something else. These marks are messages we cannot read, but we can feel their weight, their rhythm. Some dolmens align with the sunrise or sunset at particular times of the year. Solstices and equinoxes seem to guide their placement. Perhaps a calendar in stone, a measure of time passed and seasons turned. Perhaps an ancient way to honor cycles of life and death, light and shadow. Picture standing at dawn, on a winter morning. A thin shaft of sunlight slides across the entrance, illuminating the interior in a perfect line. Time itself seems to pause. The stones themselves tell a story of skill and ingenuity. Capstones weighing several tons, balanced on vertical slabs with remarkable precision. To lift them, to move them across rough terrain without modern tools, required cooperation, planning, and understanding of leverage and strength. Imagine the builders measuring, adjusting, checking alignment. Day after day, stone by stone, their hands shaping permanence. They left behind more than tombs. They left evidence of intelligence, of ritual, of care. Legends linger around these dolmens. Locals tell of spirits who live behind the stone doors, guardians who watch over the tombs, tiny people moving the stones at night. Old rituals included leaving bowls of milk, placing small offerings. Shepherds avoided sleeping near them. These tales echo the reverence and fear humans have long held for what they cannot explain. Archaeological studies reveal more puzzles. Bones show evidence of secondary burial practices. Bodies first placed elsewhere, then bones collected and placed inside the dolmen. Other dolmens show repeated use over centuries. Layers of ash, beads, and fragments of textiles speak of generations returning to honor ancestors. Each dolmen is a slow accumulation of memory. Each stone a record of human attention and devotion. The shapes of the dolmens vary. Rectangular chambers, rounded forms, stacked walls. Some have antechambers or porches, places for offerings. Some align to the stars. Some follow the paths of the sun. The builders understood geometry, balance, and astronomy in ways subtle and precise. They left us structures that endure despite centuries of weather, frost, erosion, and human neglect. The stones remain patient, silent, immovable, and yet questions remain. Who built these dolmens? Why here in these valleys on these hills? How did they move such massive stones without advanced tools? Did they have rituals we cannot reconstruct? Did they mark territories? Or were they purely for remembrance, creating homes for the dead that offered safety and dignity beyond life? We may never know. Imagine entering a dolmen. Crawl slowly through the small opening. The air is cool, still, fragrant with earth and stone. Shadows hug the walls. Carved lines catch the light faintly. Your hands brush fragments of pottery, small beads, ashes. You feel the weight of centuries pressing gently against your skin. This is a sacred place, quiet place, a place of connection across time. Outside, the hills stretch endlessly. Valleys hidden by mist. Rivers move quietly. Each dolmen is a dot in this vast landscape, a testament to lives once lived, to hands once skilled, to minds that measured and planned and revered. They are older than pyramids, yet they carry a subtle elegance. Not grandiose but profound. Each stone whispers patience. Each alignment whispers care. And in the quiet, you can almost hear the builders, long gone, leaving behind their small rooms of stone. So tonight, as the wind stirs softly, and the mountains breathe around you, remember the dolmens. Remember the mystery. Walk slowly in your imagination, among the slabs and chambers. Feel the rhythm of human intention, the careful placement, the reverence for life and death, for memory and stone. Let the silence envelop you. Let the stones speak in their quiet, enduring language. And know that some mysteries, even thousands of years old, still wait patiently to be understood. The dolmens of North Caucasus remain, silent, strong, timeless, a message from hands that are long gone, a story written in stone that asks nothing but attention, patience, and wonder. And if you listen carefully, you may just feel the echo of that ancient presence, brushing against your mind, gentle as the morning mist. The mystery of Skara Brae Stone Age Village, frozen in time. Skara Brae is a remarkable archaeological site on the Orkney Islands of Scotland. Imagine walking along a windswept coastline where the waves crash gently against rugged cliffs. Here long ago, a community of people lived in small stone houses that were built to withstand the harsh northern climate. This village is not just old, it is incredibly well preserved. Its structures have survived for over 5,000 years, offering us a window into the lives of Stone Age people. The village was accidentally discovered in 1850 after a storm removed layers of earth and sand, revealing stone foundations that had been buried for centuries. What emerged was astonishing. The site consists of several homes made entirely of stone. There are stone walls, beds, and even cupboards carved directly into the walls. Each house is connected by narrow passageways, allowing for movement between buildings, while providing shelter from the strong winds and cold temperatures common in this part of Scotland. Walking through Skara Brae, it is easy to imagine daily life. Families would gather around the central hearth to prepare food and keep warm. Tools made from bone, antler, and stone were used for hunting, cooking, and crafting. Pottery fragments found on site suggest they stored food and water carefully. The layout of the village shows a high degree of organization, even for a society that existed thousands of years before writing and complex technology. One of the most intriguing aspects of Skara Brae is the furniture. Stone beds are built into the walls, with raised platforms to keep inhabitants off the cold floor. There are storage spaces carved into the walls and shelves for keeping tools and other items. Some of the homes have multiple rooms, suggesting that families or extended groups live together. It is a level of architectural planning that is unexpected for people living at this time. The discovery of small carved stone balls at Skara Brae has puzzled archaeologists for years. They are perfectly round, smooth, and finely crafted, yet their exact purpose is unknown. Some believe they were used for ceremonial purposes, others think they were practical tools, and some even suggest they were toys. Regardless, they are a testament to the skill and creativity of the people who lived here. Life in Skara Brae was not easy. The Orkney Islands are exposed to harsh winds, limited sunlight during winter, and relatively poor soil for farming. The inhabitants relied on a combination of hunting, fishing, and gathering to survive. Evidence shows they domesticated some animals and grew crops to supplement their diet. Even in challenging conditions, they created a community with clear social structures, durable housing, and practical solutions for everyday problems. The village was eventually abandoned. Archaeologists are not entirely sure why. Some suggest climate change may have made living there increasingly difficult. Others think resources could have become scarce, or disease may have forced the community to relocate. Whatever the reason, the site remained remarkably intact, preserved by the sands and soils that had hidden it for centuries. Visiting Skara Brae today, you can sense the continuity of human experience. You can imagine children playing near the hearth, adults tending fires or preparing food, and families interacting in ways that are not so different from life today. There is a quiet intimacy in the site. Despite its age, it allows you to feel connected to people who lived long before recorded history. The village also demonstrates the importance of ingenuity. With no metal tools or written language, the inhabitants designed and built homes that have lasted millennia. They understood their environment and how to adapt to it. Their construction techniques show a keen awareness of space, wind direction, and insulation. They created comfort and security using only what was available to them. Archaeologists continue to study the site to learn more about the people who live there. Examination of animal bones, tools, and pottery fragments reveals information about diet, trade, and daily activities. The alignment of certain structures with natural features suggests an understanding of seasons and weather patterns. It is clear that the village was not built randomly. Every stone, every wall, every passageway served a purpose. Skara Brae also teaches us about the importance of community. The homes are closely clustered, and the passageways connect them in a way that encourages interaction. Families likely supported each other through daily tasks and shared knowledge across generations. This cooperation may have been essential for surviving in such a challenging environment. The level of preservation at Skara Brae is remarkable. Because the site was buried under sand for centuries, it avoided much of the erosion and destruction that affected other Stone Age settlements. As a result, we can see details that would otherwise be lost. Stone beds, cupboards, hearths, and even the subtle wear on stones that indicates how people used them. Imagining life in Skara Brae helps us appreciate the continuity of human creativity. These people lived, worked, and played in ways that are recognizable even today. Their homes were functional, their tools were practical, and their community was carefully organized. Yet they also left behind mysteries, like the carved stone balls and the reason for the village's abandonment. The Orkney Islands themselves would have shaped life at Skara Brae. The cold winds, rocky terrain, and proximity to the sea influenced how homes were built and how people organized their daily activities. Fishing and hunting were essential, as was gathering wild plants. The inhabitants knew their environment intimately and adapted to it in intelligent ways. Ultimately, Skara Brae is more than a set of ruins. It is a testament to human ingenuity, adaptation, and resilience. It reminds us that even in the most challenging conditions, people can create structures and communities that last far longer than expected. It is a village frozen in time, but one that continues to teach us about life thousands of years ago. Walking through the site, observing the stone walls and hearths, you feel a connection across millennia. You realize that human curiosity, problem-solving, and care for community are not modern inventions. They have always been part of our story. Skara Brae offers a quiet, reflective experience. It encourages patience, observation, and appreciation for the ingenuity of our ancestors. And in that quiet, one can almost hear the echoes of lifelong past, the laughter of children, the conversation of families, and the steady work of people who built homes to last. Skara Brae remains silent, but speaking, a reminder that the past is never truly gone, and that the human story is long, rich, and full of wonder. The musta tiles of Arabia, massive prehistoric stone rectangles, scattered across the deserts of northern Arabia, in the vast emptiness of Saudi Arabia, lie structures that have puzzled archaeologists for decades. From above they appear as simple, elongated rectangles of stone, stretching hundreds of meters across the landscape. These are the musta tiles, some of the oldest known monumental structures in the region, built more than 7,000 years ago. At first glance, a musta tile might look unremarkable, stone walls forming long, narrow rectangles. But the more you observe, the stranger and more intriguing they become. Many of these rectangles have a platform or a mound at one end, built with larger stones. Others contain smaller enclosures. There are no carvings, no inscriptions, no obvious indications of their purpose. And yet, they were clearly made with intention. The construction is impressive. Stones, sometimes weighing hundreds of kilograms, were transported across the desert without the aid of modern tools, vehicles, or even draft animals. The walls are low, but they extend for hundreds of meters, forming precise lines that are astonishingly straight. This suggests that builders had a clear plan and purpose, even if that purpose remains hidden to us today. Archaeologists have theorized that musta tiles were ritual structures, perhaps ceremonial sites, places for gatherings, or sites for religious offerings. Some stones found within the enclosures appear to have been deliberately arranged, and in a few, evidence of animal sacrifices has been discovered. This points to the possibility that the musta tiles were sacred spaces, central to the spiritual life of the communities that built them. It is easy to underestimate the scale of these structures. A single musta tile can measure over 600 meters in length. Imagine walking along its walls, the desert stretching endlessly in every direction. The effort required to move the stones, plan the layout, and construct these enclosures is staggering, especially for a society that lived in a harsh, arid environment, relying on hunting, gathering, and early pastoralism. The age of these structures makes them even more remarkable. Radiocarbon dating suggests that many musta tiles were built between 700 and 900 years ago, at a time when agriculture was only beginning to develop in parts of the world. This places them earlier than the Egyptian pyramids and contemporary with the earliest known Neolithic settlements. These were not people with advanced tools or engineering knowledge as we understand it today. They were early humans, yet capable of monumental architecture. Walking through the desert and encountering a musta tile, you can almost feel the intentions of its builders. Why were these rectangles built in this particular location? Many are aligned along sight lines, sometimes oriented towards water sources, hills, or other natural landmarks. Perhaps these alignments were meaningful, guiding rituals or marking territories. Or perhaps they reflected celestial observations. Some scholars have suggested that certain mustatiles align with sunrise or sunset at particular times of the year, hinting at a knowledge of the cycle, even if rudimentary. The simplicity of the rectangles is deceptive. Inside, some mustatiles reveal more complexity. Stones arranged in patterns, small enclosures at one end, sometimes with depressions that might have held offerings. It's tempting to imagine the ceremonies that took place here, groups of people gathering in the desert, chanting or performing rituals, perhaps to ensure the survival of their herds, the fertility of their land, or the favor of unseen spirits. There is also the question of why these structures were eventually abandoned. Over millennia, many were buried under shifting sands. Some may have been deliberately filled in after their use ended. And yet, they survive as quiet monuments to human determination and the desire to leave a mark. In a place where wind and sand erase almost everything, the mustatiles endure. They are silent witnesses to lives long past, telling us that even in the harshest conditions, humans sought meaning, order, and ritual. The scale of collaboration required to build a mustatile is another mystery. Early societies were small, scattered groups. How did they coordinate hundreds of people to transport stones, plan layouts, and construct enclosures? This suggests social organization far beyond what one might expect from hunter-gatherer or early pastoral communities. Leadership, planning, and shared purpose must have been essential. Archaeologists continue to study these structures to understand more about the people who built them. Stone tools, animal bones, and charcoal fragments provide clues about their diet, rituals, and way of life. But the lack of written records means that much about the mustatiles remains speculative. Every new discovery raises more questions than answers. One of the most striking features is the consistency of the mustatiles. Across hundreds of kilometers from northern Saudi Arabia to Jordan, these rectangular enclosures share similar characteristics. Long, narrow rectangles with platforms or mounds at one end. This repetition suggests a shared culture or belief system, perhaps a network of communities connected by ritual practices. It's remarkable to think that thousands of years ago, people in this vast desert were working with a common vision, leaving behind structures that still speak to us today. Some mustatiles have recently revealed evidence of fire pits and animal remains, supporting the idea that they were places of ritual feasting or ceremonial offerings. The animals were often domesticated, such as cattle or goats, which hints at early pastoral practices. The connection between daily survival and spiritual practice becomes clear here. These structures were more than stone rectangles. They were central to the rhythm of life, blending the practical with the sacred. Imagining a mustatile in use, one can picture a desert dawn. Light spills across the stone walls, shadows stretch across the sand. People gather, voices low, tending fires, arranging offerings, performing rituals that have been lost to time. It is quiet, but it carries the weight of meaning and purpose. The builders may have had no writing, no written history, yet they left behind evidence of deep thought, intention, and care. The mustatiles remind us of the universality of human behavior. Across continents and millennia, people have sought to create, to leave a mark, to understand the world through ritual and construction. The desert may seem empty today, but thousands of years ago it was alive with human activity, ingenuity, and belief. Even now, when archaeologists study the site, they are struck by the mystery. The mustatiles are simple in form, yet the logistics, planning, and cultural significance are complex. Every stone moved, every rectangle aligned, speaks to an ancient human desire to structure the world, to give meaning to life, and to create something lasting. As we stand in the modern desert, surrounded by sand, wind, and these massive stone rectangles, it is easy to feel small, and yet we are connected to these ancient builders. Their intentions, their creativity, and their dedication resonate across time. The mustard tiles endure, silent, mysterious, and humbling, a testament to human ingenuity and the enduring power of ritual. The Hittite lion gates, forgotten empire's guardians. In the rugged lands of central Anatolia, in what is today modern Turkey, once stood the heart of a powerful and mysterious empire, the Hittites. They were a Bronze Age superpower, rivals of the Egyptians and Assyrians, masters of warfare, diplomacy, and stone architecture. And among the ruins of their ancient cities, one of the most enduring images remains: the massive lion gates. At the ancient city of Hattusa, the Hittite capital, these gates still stand. Two colossal lions carved from blocks of basalt flank the entrance. Their eyes stare outward, their mouths slightly open, their bodies strong and protective. These were not mere decorations. They were guardians, symbols of power, strength, and divine protection. To pass between them was to enter not just a city, but the realm of kings and gods. The Hittites built their cities with impressive fortifications. High walls of stone and mud bricks stretched across the hills, punctuated with gates that were both functional and symbolic. The Lion Gate was one of the most important. It was not simply an entry point for travelers or soldiers. It was a statement. To approach it was to see immediately the authority of the Hittite Empire. Standing before the gate today, you cannot help but feel its presence. The lions, weathered but still imposing, carry a sense of timeless watchfulness. Their design is stylized, not naturalistic, but powerful in its abstraction. The Hittites were not trying to capture every detail of an animal. They were invoking its essence. The lion, in their world, was the embodiment of power, protection, and divine force. For the Hittites, lions were more than animals. They were connected to gods, particularly to the storm god Tezhub, one of the chief deities in their pantheon. Lions were associated with the untamed forces of nature, with battle, and with divine guardianship. To place them at the entrance of a city was to place the protection of the gods over its people. The gates also served a psychological function. Imagine arriving at Hattusa in the late Bronze Age. You would climb steep roads, surrounded by massive fortifications. And then, looming before you were the carved lions. For a visitor, it was both awe-inspiring and intimidating. For enemies, it was a warning. The Hittites wanted to project not only military power, but also spiritual dominance. The Lion Gates are more than 3,000 years old. Yet they have survived the fall of the Hittite Empire, centuries of abandonment, and the slow erosion of time. They remind us of an empire that once dominated much of Anatolia and the Near East. The Hittites controlled trade routes, commanded powerful armies with chariots, and signed treaties with pharaohs. They were not a minor people lost to history. They were one of the great powers of their age. Yet their story is filled with mystery. For centuries after their empire collapsed, the Hittites were forgotten. Unlike Egypt, with its hieroglyphs and monuments, the Hittites left behind few records that were immediately understood. It was only in the 19th century that archaeologists rediscovered their ruins and inscriptions, piecing together the story of this once mighty civilization. The Lion Gates, in particular, became an iconic symbol of that rediscovery. The construction of the gates themselves is fascinating. Large basalt stones were carved and placed with precision, fitted into the walls with remarkable skill. The lions were carved in high relief, their forms emerging from the stone with an almost sculptural presence. These were not crude works. They were crafted by skilled artisans who understood both engineering and symbolism. Some scholars suggest the gates were not just physical defenses, but also ritual thresholds. In many ancient cultures, gates marked the boundary between the human world and the divine. Passing through the Lion Gates may have symbolized entry into sacred space, protected by powerful guardians. Festivals, processions, and ceremonies may have passed under their watchful eyes. The Hittites themselves left clues about how important lions were in their world. Lion imagery appears in seals, carvings, and ritual texts. In some reliefs, kings are shown standing upon lions or flanked by them, emphasizing their divine mandate to rule. The lion gates were part of this broader symbolic landscape, reinforcing the connection between kingship, divinity, and protection. When archaeologists uncovered the gates in the early 20th century, they were struck by their scale and artistry. Even in ruins, the power of the Hittite state was evident. Today, the Lion Gate at Hattusa is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, preserved as part of the larger archaeological remains of the Hittite capital. Visitors walk between the ancient lions, much as people did 3 millennia ago, feeling the continuity of human experience. The gates also raise questions that remain unanswered. Why did the Hittite Empire collapse so suddenly around 1200 BC? Was it invasions, internal strife, famine, or the mysterious sea peoples who disrupted so many civilizations of the Eastern Mediterranean? Whatever the cause, the empire vanished, and the gates remained, silent witnesses to its passing. The symbolism of the lions endures. Across cultures and times, lions have represented strength, guardianship, and authority. From Mesopotamia to India, from Egypt to Europe, lions guard temples, palaces, and sacred spaces. The Hittite lion gates fit into this universal pattern, showing how humans have always sought to embody power and protection through the image of the lion. Standing before them today, one can imagine the world of the Hittites. The clang of chariots on stone roads, the home of life in a bustling capital, priests offering rituals to the storm god, kings planning wars or alliances, and above it all, the carved lions watching silently, enduring through the centuries. They are not simply ruins. They are symbols of continuity. They remind us that civilizations rise and fall, but their expressions of meaning and belief can endure long after their people are gone. The lion gates are guardians not only of a city that no longer exists, but also of memory itself. For the traveler who pauses to look into their weathered eyes, there is a moment of recognition, the same impulse that led the Hittites to carve lions into stone, the desire for protection, strength, and connection to something greater, still resonates with us today. The lion gates of Hattusa stand as the forgotten empire's guardians. They guard not just an ancient city, but the very idea that human creativity and belief leave marks that can last thousands of years. They remind us that while the Hittites are gone, their spirit endures, carved in stone, looking out over the ages. The Mount Shasta petroglyphs, ancient symbols in America. Mount Shasta, rising like a great white pyramid in Northern California, has always been more than just a mountain. For the native peoples of the region, it is a sacred place, a center of myths, spirits, and origin stories. Even today, many regard it as a place of mystery and power. But scattered around its slopes and in the surrounding lava beds lie carvings that take the mystery even further. The Mount Shasta petroglyphs. These petroglyphs, ancient symbols carved into rock, are among the most puzzling in North America. Etched into lava rock, they show patterns, shapes, animals, and signs that no one fully understands. Archaeologists can date them broadly, but not precisely. Some believe they were carved thousands of years ago, perhaps by the ancestors of modern Native American tribes. Others suggest they could be older still, remnants of forgotten peoples whose stories have vanished. When you walk among them, the feeling is unlike that of a museum or a book. You're outside, in the open air, surrounded by the silent landscape of lava flows and sparse forests. And then suddenly you notice a rock with strange markings. Circles, spirals, stick figures, paw prints, geometric lines. They are shallow but deliberate. They were placed there with meaning. And yet that meaning is now beyond us. To the Modoc, Shasta, Wintu, and other native peoples of the region, the mountain is alive with spirits. It is considered a place of creation. Some stories say that the world itself began at Mount Shasta. In such a setting, the petroglyphs may have been sacred inscriptions, prayers, warnings, or maps of the spirit world. They may have marked places where shamans held ceremonies, where stories were passed down, or where hunters asked for success. But the mystery deepens when we realize how little direct information has survived. Many of the tribes who once lived in the area were displaced or destroyed during the violent colonization of the American West. Oral traditions were lost, languages faded, and sacred sites were desecrated. Today, archaeologists must piece together fragments of memory and compare them with the silent stones. One striking feature is the variety of designs. Some resemble tracks of animals, bear paws, bird prints, even human footprints. Others are abstract, spirals, concentric circles, zigzags, dots. Were these meant to represent journeys, the stars, the cycle of life and death? Or were they simply markers of territory, scratched by travelers as they passed? Archaeologists call them rock art, but that phrase hardly captures their depth. These were not decorations in the sense we think of art today. They were messages, they were expressions of belief and identity, and they were meant to endure. Carving into lava rock is not easy. It takes time and effort, using stone tools to chip away at the surface. Whoever carved these symbols wanted them to last, and they have. Some of the petroglyphs have endured for thousands of years, through rain, wind, snow, and the shifting of the earth. To see them today is to connect directly with someone who lived long before us, who stood in the same landscape, who looked at the same mountain, and who chose to leave a mark. But there are also mysteries that trouble archaeologists. In some cases, the style of the petroglyphs does not clearly match the known traditions of the local tribes. This has led some to speculate about other, earlier cultures in the region. Cultures we know almost nothing about. Could the carvings be remnants of people who lived near Mount Shasta before the ancestors of the modern tribes arrived? Or perhaps they were travelers, people from distant lands who left their marks while passing through. Mount Shasta itself fuels speculation. Even today, it is a magnet for spiritual seekers, mystics, and those who believe in lost civilizations. Some fringe theories suggest the petroglyphs are evidence of Lemuria, a mythical lost continent said to have sunk beneath the Pacific Ocean. According to these ideas, survivors of Lemuria built underground cities beneath Mount Shasta and left clues in the form of symbols. Most archaeologists dismiss this as myth, but the persistence of such stories shows how powerful the mountain's aura really is. What we do know for certain is that the petroglyphs are fragile, vandalism and natural erosion threaten them. In some cases, people have carved their own initials into the rocks, defacing symbols that had lasted millennia. Efforts are now being made to protect and preserve the sites to ensure they survive for future generations. Yet, with every passing year, the details become harder to read. When standing among the Mount Shasta petroglyphs, one cannot help but feel small. The mountain towers above, snow-capped even in summer, its slopes sweeping down into forests and lava beds. The silence is broken only by the wind or the distant call of a bird. And then, at your feet, there are these human marks scratched into stone so long ago. They are reminders that people lived here, that they too gazed at this mountain, and that they felt compelled to leave something behind. In that moment, questions rise unbidden. What were they trying to say? Was it a record of their lives? Was it a connection to the divine? Was it simply a way to pass time? Or was it the most serious act they could perform? We cannot know, but perhaps the mystery itself is part of the meaning. Many cultures believe that sacred knowledge is not meant to be fully explained, that some truths are preserved in mystery, accessible only through silence, contemplation, or dreams. Perhaps the petroglyphs are not meant to be solved like a puzzle. Perhaps they are meant to be experienced, to draw us into the same space of wonder that the carvers once felt. As night falls near Mount Shasta, the carvings fade into shadow. The mountain itself glows in the last light of the sun, then disappears into the starry dark. Somewhere in the silence, the stones hold their secrets. They wait, as they always have, for the curious eye, the thoughtful visitor, the dreamer willing to wonder. The Mount Shasta petroglyphs remain ancient symbols in America, silent, enduring, and mysterious. Guardians of stories that no one alive remembers, yet that still speak to us in ways words cannot. The Hagar Chem temples, megaliths of Malta. On the sun-drenched island of Malta, surrounded by the deep blue Mediterranean Sea, stand some of the oldest freestanding structures in the world. Long before the pyramids of Giza were built, before Stonehenge was raised in the English countryside, people here were already moving massive stones and arranging them into temples. One of the most extraordinary of these is Hagar Chem. From a distance, Hagar Chem looks like a cluster of weathered boulders resting on a ridge above the sea. But as you walk closer, you realize that these stones were not placed here by accident. They were cut, shaped, and deliberately arranged by human hands thousands of years ago. Some are so massive that it is hard to believe people without metal tools or the wheel could have moved them. The largest stone at Hagar Chem weighs more than 20 tons. Step inside, and you feel as if you've entered a world between the human and the divine. The stones form chambers, passageways, and altars. Light spills in through carefully chosen openings. There are curved walls that almost seem to embrace you, and doorways cut in shapes that make you pause and wonder. It doesn't feel like a simple shelter, it feels like a place meant for ritual. Archaeologists estimate that Hagar Chem was built around 3600 BCE, which makes it more than 5,000 years old. That's older than most of recorded history. And yet, it is surprisingly sophisticated. The builders knew how to cut limestone blocks with precision. They knew how to transport them across the land. They understood balance, weight, and space. But more than that, they understood symbolism. One of the most fascinating things about Hagar Chem is how it seems to align with the heavens. On the day of the summer solstice, sunlight passes directly through one of the temple's doorways and strikes a stone slab inside. The builders clearly had an interest in the cycles of the sun, the rhythms of the seasons, and perhaps the connection between earthly life and cosmic order. But Hagar Chem is not just a single building. It is part of a whole network of megalithic temples spread across Malta and its sister island, Gozo. Together they form one of the greatest archaeological treasures in Europe. And yet, outside of the archaeology world, many people have never heard of them. Inside the temple, archaeologists have found altars, statues, and carved stone features that suggest rituals of fertility and life. Some statues are of corpulent, wide-hipped figures often referred to as fat ladies. These figures may have represented fertility goddesses, symbols of abundance, or spiritual guardians of the community. Their exact meaning is still debated, but they speak to the importance of life, birth, and renewal in the culture that built these temples. What makes Hagar Chem so haunting is the absence of clear records. The people who built it left no written language that we know of. They left no stories carved in stone, no scrolls, no direct messages to explain what these temples meant to them. All we can do is look at the stones, at the carvings, at the alignment with the sun, and try to imagine what life was like, and that life was not easy. Malta is rocky and dry, with limited natural resources. To build temples of this scale, communities must have been highly organized. They needed food surpluses to free up workers. They needed skilled artisans to shape the stones. They needed leaders who could inspire people to commit to such massive projects. And they needed beliefs powerful enough to justify the effort. Standing at Hagar Chem today, You can feel the passage of time in every block of limestone. Some stones are eroded, softened by centuries of wind and rain, but the shapes are still there. The doorways still lead into inner chambers. The altars are still recognizable. It is as if the temple has been waiting patiently, watching generations come and go, holding onto its secrets. Why were these temples eventually abandoned? We don't know. Perhaps climate changes made life harder on the island. Perhaps the society that built them collapsed or was replaced by others. Perhaps new beliefs made the old temples irrelevant. Whatever the reason, they were left behind, buried slowly by earth and time, until archaeologists uncovered them again in the 19th century. Today, Hagar Kem is protected by a large tent-like shelter that shields it from the elements. Visitors walk along wooden paths, gazing up at the immense stones, imagining the hands that once placed them. For some, it feels like a connection to ancestors long forgotten. For others, it is a reminder of how fragile human achievements are, even the ones built in stone. There is a quiet beauty here. The Mediterranean sun, the salty air, the endless horizon of the sea. And in the middle of it all, this temple, silent, enduring, mysterious. You can almost picture a gathering of ancient people, dressed in animal skins or woven cloth, standing in the chambers, chanting, praying, or celebrating under the summer solstice sun. Hagar Kem is a reminder that human beings, even in the Stone Age, were not simply struggling to survive. They were reaching for meaning. They were organizing their world, building spaces to honor forces greater than themselves, and trying to make sense of life and death. In that sense, they were not so different from us. The megaliths of Malta are among the greatest unsolved mysteries of archaeology. They tell us that our ancestors were capable of extraordinary achievements. They challenge us to think about what drove them, what inspired them, and why they chose to build something that would outlast their own lives. As night falls on Malta, the temple grows quiet again. The stones glow in the fading light, then merge into shadow. The sea whispers nearby. The wind moves through the grass, and Hagar Kem waits, just as it has waited for thousands of years. A puzzle in stone, a voice from a people we will never fully know. The Atlit Yam settlement, sunken village in Israel. Beneath the calm blue waters of the Mediterranean Sea, just off the coast of modern-day Israel, lies a place that once thrived with human life. A place where families built homes, tended to animals, gathered food, and raised children. Today it is silent, hidden beneath the waves. This is Atlit Yam, one of the world's oldest known submerged villages. Discovered in the 1980s by marine archaeologists, Atlit Yam rests about 10 meters below the surface of the sea, not far from the town of Atlit. What they found beneath the water was astonishing. Stone houses, walls, and courtyards, grinding stones used for preparing food, hearths where meals were cooked, even wells, still visible, dug deep into the earth by human hands thousands of years ago. It was as if a piece of prehistory had been frozen in time, preserved not by dry deserts or glaciers, but by the sea itself. Atlit Yam dates back to around 9,000 years ago, during the Neolithic period. That makes it older than the pyramids, older than Stonehenge, older than most civilizations we think of as ancient. And yet the people of Atlit Yam had already begun to live in organized communities. They were farming, herding animals, and building permanent homes. In a sense, they were among the pioneers of village life. Walking through the ruins, if one could walk instead of swimming, you would see rectangular stone houses arranged in clusters. Each home had areas for sleeping, cooking, and working. Nearby archaeologists discovered bones of domesticated animals, including goats and cattle. They also found evidence of fishing, with net weights and fish bones scattered among the ruins. The people of Atlit Yam lived on land and sea alike, but what makes Atlit Yam truly haunting are the human remains. Skeletons of men, women, and children have been found here, lying in graves that were carefully prepared. Some were buried with simple offerings, tokens of love or belief. One of the most famous discoveries was a woman and a child buried together, their bones showing signs of tuberculosis. This is the earliest known evidence of the disease in human history. It reminds us that even in these early villages, people suffered from illness, and communities had to care for one another in the face of hardship. In the center of the site lies perhaps the most mysterious feature, a circle of massive stone pillars, arranged upright, as if marking a special place. Archaeologists believe it may have been a ritual site, perhaps connected to water, fertility, or community gatherings. The stones are heavy and deliberate, not randomly placed. They tell us that these early villagers had more than just survival on their minds. They had ritual, they had ceremony, they had meaning woven into daily life. The big question, of course, is why Atlit Yam ended up beneath the sea. And here, the mystery deepens. Evidence suggests that around 7,000 years ago, the rising waters of the Mediterranean slowly crept inland. Some argue it was caused by melting glaciers after the last ice age. Others point to seismic activity in the region. Even the possibility of a sudden tsunami, triggered by earthquakes. Whatever the cause, the people of Atlit Yam were eventually forced to abandon their homes. Their village disappeared beneath the waves, preserved almost like a time capsule. Imagine the moment, families realizing that their homes were flooding, wells filling with salt water, fields lost to the encroaching sea. The choice to stay was impossible. They would have packed what they could, gathered their animals, and moved inland, leaving behind the stone houses, the hearths, the tools that were too heavy to carry. And so the village slept, waiting thousands of years for discovery. For archaeologists, Atlit Yam offers something rare, a direct window into the life of one of the earliest farming and fishing communities. It shows us how quickly humans adapted to new ways of living. After the Ice Age, it shows us the balance between land and sea, between farming and fishing, between ritual and survival. And it shows us that even in those early centuries, humanity already faced challenges from the natural world that could not be overcome. Some diverse who visit the site today speak of the eerie feeling it creates. Swimming among the stone walls, seeing the outlines of homes, peering into ancient wells, there is a strange sensation of both presence and absence, the presence of a community that once lived, laughed, and struggled here, and the absence of their voices, their stories, their day-to-day lives, which are now beyond reach. Atlit Yam has also become a touchstone for discussions about climate change. It is a reminder that rising seas are not just a modern concern. Thousands of years ago, entire communities were displaced by shifting coastlines. Their villages became ruins underwater. Their stories turned into mysteries, and the cycle continues. The bones, the tools, the carvings, the structures, all whisper the same message. People were here, they worked, they prayed, they raised families, and though their voices are gone, their presence is still felt. Atlit Yam is more than an archaeological site, it is a testament to human resilience and fragility at the same time. If you close your eyes, you can almost hear it, the sound of waves lapping at the shore, the laughter of children running between stone houses, the crackle of fire in a hearth, the call of fishermen hauling in their catch, and then, slowly, the silence as the sea rises, swallowing it all. Today, Atlit Yam rests quietly on the seafloor, visited only by divers and studied by archaeologists. But its significance reaches far beyond its watery grave. It tells us about beginnings of villages, of farming, of ritual. It tells us about endings, of loss, of displacement, of nature reclaiming what was built, and it leaves us with a mystery still unsolved. What was it truly like to live in this sunken village, so many thousands of years ago? Atlit Yam is gone, but it is not forgotten. The stones remain, the skeletons remain, the questions remain. A silent village beneath the sea, waiting for us to remember and to wonder. The Toltec Atlantean statues, giant stone warriors. High on a plateau in central Mexico, surrounded by rolling hills and open skies, stands a group of stone figures that are as imposing today as they must have been 1,000 years ago. They are known as the Atlantean statues of Tula, carved by the Toltec civilization, and they have watched silently over the land for centuries. When you first see them, rising more than 15 feet into the air, you immediately sense their power. For massive warriors, carved from stone, standing side by side on the platform of an ancient pyramid. They wear helmets, breastplates, and carry weapons, their stone faces fixed in eternal vigilance. These are not ordinary statues, they are guardians, symbols of strength and authority, and to this day they remain one of the great unsolved mysteries of Mesoamerican archaeology. The Toltecs ruled in central Mexico from around the 10th to the 12th century CE, long before the rise of the Aztec Empire. Their capital city, Tula, was once filled with temples, pyramids, ball courts, and palaces. At its height, it was home to tens of thousands of people, a hub of culture and religion. The Atlantean statues stood at the very heart of this city, atop the temple of Tlahuizcal-Pentecuitli, the temple of the morning star. Each statue is carved in the form of a warrior. You can see the details in their helmets, their chest armor, the weapons they hold. Some carry atlatls, spear throwers used in battle. Others are decorated with butterfly-shaped emblems, a common Toltec symbol of transformation and power. Even in stone, they look ready for war, ready to protect their city and their people. But here is the mystery. Were these statues meant to represent actual Toltec warriors? Were they depictions of gods? Or were they something in between, mythical guardians that blurred the line between human and divine? Archaeologists still debate this. Their size and placement suggest they were far more than simple decorations. To climb the pyramid at Tula and be greeted by these towering figures must have been overwhelming, even intimidating. It was a clear statement of power, and yet, despite their strength, the Toltec civilization eventually declined. Tula was abandoned, its temples left to crumble. The Atlantean warriors remained, standing in silence over an empty city. By the time the Aztecs rose to power centuries later, they looked upon these statues with awe. To them, the Toltecs were legendary ancestors, master builders, and wise teachers. The Aztecs even borrowed much of their culture, mythology, and political systems from the memory of the Toltecs. And so the Atlantean statues became not only relics of one civilization, but symbols of continuity for another. Standing before the statues today, you can still feel the weight of their presence. Their eyes do not blink, their expressions are stern, almost otherworldly. They do not seem like mere sculptures, they seem alive, frozen in time, guardians who will never step down. The details carved into their stone bodies raise further questions. Some researchers note that parts of their equipment resemble technology, not usually associated with the ancient Toltecs. Their weapons look like atlatls, yes, but some carvings appear to show objects that resemble modern gear, belts, pouches, even something that could be interpreted as a breathing apparatus. Fringe theorists have gone so far as to suggest that the statues are depictions of ancient astronauts or beings from another world. Most archaeologists dismiss this, pointing out that all of the elements can be explained within Toltec culture. But the resemblance has fueled endless speculation. What we can say with certainty is that the statues embodied Toltec ideals of warfare, sacrifice, and divine order. The Toltecs, like many Mesoamerican cultures, believed that human existence was intertwined with the cosmos. The gods required offerings, sometimes even blood, to keep the sun moving and the world in balance. Warriors played a central role in this worldview. They were not only defenders of the city, but also providers of captives for ritual sacrifice. In that sense, these stone warriors were eternal reminders of the sacred duty of war. Imagine climbing the pyramid at Tula 1,000 years ago. the sun blazing overhead, the wide plaza below filled with people, priests chanting, warriors assembling, smoke rising from incense burners, and at the top these towering figures looking down upon it all. For the Toltecs, this was the center of the universe, the place where heaven and earth met, guarded by warriors who never slept. Yet the statues are not only about intimidation, there is artistry in them as well. Their proportions are carefully balanced. Their faces are calm, not angry. Their poses are firm but not aggressive. They exude a sense of order, discipline, and permanence. Whoever carved them understood not only the physical demands of working with stone, but also the psychological effect of monumental art. When Tula eventually fell, perhaps due to drought, conflict, or political upheaval, the statues remained. For centuries this story had been passed down orally. Thanks to Ashurbanipal's collection, it survived the fall of his empire. Without this library, the tale of Gilgamesh, his friendship with Enkidu, his quest for immortality, his confrontation with the gods, might have been lost forever. The library also contained texts on astronomy, listing star charts and planetary movements. It had omen texts that described what it meant if the moon appeared in a certain way, or if a solar eclipse occurred. There were medical texts that outlined treatments for diseases using herbs, oils, and rituals. There were incantations against demons and spirits, as well as prayers to gods long forgotten. Taken together, the library offers us a window into the Assyrian mind. It is not just a record of one kingdom, it is a mirror of how the ancient world understood itself, its fears, its hopes, its questions about life and death. But here is where the story turns mysterious. Despite Ashurbanipal's efforts to preserve knowledge, his empire did not last. In 612 BCE, Nineveh was attacked by a coalition of Babylonians, Medes, and Persians. The great city fell, palaces were burned, temples destroyed, the empire collapsed, and the library, though filled with fragile clay tablets, somehow endured. How? Fire, which normally consumes books and scrolls, actually helped preserve these clay tablets. The heat hardened them, turning them into a kind of accidental pottery. The very disaster that destroyed the Assyrian Empire ensured that its knowledge would survive for thousands of years. Still, not everything survived. Thousands of tablets are broken, missing pieces of text. Entire works may have been lost, leaving us with tantalizing fragments. Scholars sometimes spend years piecing together a single tablet, like assembling a puzzle with missing parts. What secrets remain unread, buried in those fragments, we may never know. There are also hints that Ashurbanipal's library may not have been unique. Some historians suggest that other Assyrian kings kept libraries, but theirs have not been found, or perhaps they were destroyed beyond recognition. It raises the question, how much knowledge from the ancient world has been permanently lost to time? If one library, preserved by accident, could change our understanding of history, how many more stories are waiting in silence beneath the earth? Another layer of mystery surrounds Ashurbanipal himself. Why did he value knowledge so highly? Was it purely for practical purposes, to aid his priests, scribes, and administrators? Or was it something deeper, a true love of wisdom? He was, after all, a king of war, ruling one of the most brutal empires in history. The Assyrians were known for their military conquests, their iron weapons, their relentless expansion, and yet their greatest surviving legacy is not destruction, but preservation, a library of clay. Today, many of the tablets are housed in the British Museum, where they continue to be studied. Scholars still work to translate and interpret them. Each fragment offers a glimpse into a world that feels both alien and familiar. Lists of sacrifices to gods we no longer worship. Instructions for treating ailments with herbs, still used today. Poems that wrestle with mortality in ways we recognize instantly. The Library of Ashurbanipal is more than an archaeological treasure. It is a reminder of how fragile human knowledge can be, and how miraculous it is when it survives. It bridges thousands of years, allowing voices from the past to speak to us directly. For centuries they watched over an empty city, their meanings slowly fading from memory. When Spanish explorers arrived in Mexico in the 16th century, they heard legends of the Toltecs, but did not fully understand what these ancient ruins represented. It was only in the 19th and 20th centuries that archaeologists began to excavate Tula and study its monuments in detail. Today, the Atlantean statues are among the most iconic images of pre-Columbian Mexico. Tourists travel from around the world to see them, standing on their platform against the backdrop of the Mexican sky. Scholars continue to study their meaning, their symbolism, their construction. And storytellers, dreamers, and mystics continue to imagine what secrets they might hold. Are they simple monuments to human warriors? Are they depictions of gods who once demanded blood and fire? Or are they something else? Symbols that carry layers of meaning, both earthly and cosmic, that we may never fully understand. At night, when the site is quiet, the statues are even more imposing. Their dark silhouettes rise against the stars, as if they themselves are keeping watch over the heavens. The city below is gone, the people who built them are gone, but the guardians remain, silent, unyielding, eternal. The Toltec Atlantean statues remind us that civilizations may rise and fall, but some creations endure. They are more than stone. They are memory carved into rock. They are guardians of a forgotten empire. They are mysteries that stand tall, asking us to look, to wonder, and to listen. The lost library of Ashurbanipal, tablets of forgotten knowledge in the ruins of Nineveh, the once great capital of the Assyrian Empire. Archaeologists uncovered something extraordinary. Not gold, not weapons, not statues of kings, but a library. A collection of clay tablets, inscribed with cuneiform script, carefully catalogued and preserved. It is known today as the Library of Ashurbanipal, and it is one of the most remarkable discoveries of the ancient world. Imagine that for a moment. A library created almost 2,700 years ago, in the 7th century BCE, a time when much of the world lived in small villages, when iron was still a relatively new invention, when paper as we know it did not even exist. And yet in Assyria, there was a king who gathered knowledge from across Mesopotamia, storing it not on paper or parchment, but on tablets of clay. Ashurbanipal, who ruled from 668 to 627 BCE, was no ordinary king. Unlike many rulers of his time, he was not only a warrior and a politician, but also a scholar. He claimed that he could read and write in both Sumerian and Akkadian, the scholarly and administrative languages of Mesopotamia. He collected texts on history, religion, mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and literature. He wanted to preserve the wisdom of the ancient world. And in doing so, he created something that feels astonishingly modern. A library meant for the future. When archaeologists began excavating Nineveh in the 19th century, they found over 30,000 clay tablets and fragments. Many were shattered, scattered among the ruins, but even in pieces, they revealed an entire universe of knowledge. Some tablets contained administrative records, tax lists, inventories, things you would expect from an empire. But others contained epic poetry, myths, omens, medical recipes, rituals, even instructions for interpreting dreams. One of the greatest treasures of the library was the Epic of Gilgamesh, the world's oldest known epic poem. Voices that would otherwise have been silenced forever. At night, if you imagine yourself in the ruins of Nineveh, among the broken stones and silent walls, You can almost hear the whispers of those tablets, the scratching of a scribe's stylus, the chant of a priest reciting from an omen text, the rhythm of an epic poem read aloud to a king who believed that words had power, not only in the present, but in the future. Perhaps that was Ashurbanipal's true vision, that his library would outlast his empire, that while armies and palaces crumble, knowledge might endure. And in a way he was right. His empire is gone, his city is a ruin, but his library remains, and with it the memory of a world that still has much to teach us. The Newrig Towers of Sardinia, builders still unknown. If you travel to the island of Sardinia, off the coast of Italy, you will find yourself surrounded by a mystery that rises from the landscape in the form of stone towers. These are the Newrig, massive prehistoric structures built of rough stones, stacked without mortar, some reaching as high as a modern 5-story building. There are more than 7,000 of them scattered across Sardinia, and yet we still do not know exactly who built them, why they were built, or how such an advanced culture could vanish so quietly, leaving behind only these monumental ruins. The Newrig are unlike anything else in Europe. They date back to the Bronze Age, with estimates suggesting construction began around 1800 BCE and continued for centuries. Each tower is made of large basalt or granite blocks, carefully placed to form a truncated cone. The stones are massive, some weighing several tons, and yet they fit together with such precision that the structures have stood for more than 3,000 years. Even earthquakes, storms, and centuries of abandonment have not erased them from the landscape. At first glance, you might think of them as simple fortresses. They have thick walls, small entrances, and interior chambers often arranged in a beehive-like design, with corbelled domes rising above. Many are surrounded by outer walls, smaller towers, and even entire villages of stone huts. Some form complex networks with corridors, stairways, and hidden rooms. They look defensive, almost like castles from a much later time. Archaeologists are not so sure. The truth is, we do not know the real purpose of the Newrig. Some believe they were built as fortresses to protect communities during times of conflict. Others argue they may have been temples, places for rituals dedicated to deities now lost to memory. There are suggestions that they were symbols of power, built by chieftains or tribal leaders to assert dominance. And some researchers think they might even have served astronomical purposes, aligned with the stars or solstices, a kind of prehistoric observatory. The people who built them are today referred to as the Nuragic civilization. Yet strangely, we know almost nothing about them. They left behind no written records, no clear art, and no monuments that identify kings, rulers, or gods. All we have are the towers, fragments of pottery, bronze figurines, and scattered remains of their settlements. It is as though they lived, thrived, and then disappeared, leaving us only silent stones to guess their story. One of the most intriguing aspects of the Nuragi is the sheer scale of their construction. Building one tower would have required an immense amount of labor, organization, and engineering knowledge. To move the stones, lift them into place, and construct domes without mortar would have taken generations of expertise. And yet, there are thousands of them. This was not the work of a single village or tribe. It suggests an entire culture dedicated to these structures, with a shared vision and purpose we still cannot decode. When you walk among the ruins today, you feel the weight of that mystery. Some towers rise high above the landscape, while others are broken, reduced to piles of stone. In some places, Nuragi appear in clusters, dominating a valley, or standing on hilltops like watchful guardians. They seem to form a network, as if designed to be seen from one to another across the land, like a prehistoric communication system. And yet, questions remain. Why did this culture build so many towers? Why invest so much effort in structures that, to our eyes, do not serve a clear function? Were they built for defense, religion, or something else entirely? And most importantly, what happened to the people who built them? Archaeologists have uncovered bronze statuettes from the Nuragic culture, depicting warriors, ships, and animals. These suggest a society with advanced metalworking skills and perhaps a maritime tradition. But the sudden decline of the Nuragic civilization around the time of the Roman expansion leaves scholars puzzled. Were they absorbed by other cultures? Were they weakened by internal strife, famine, or disease? Or did their society simply transform, leaving the Nuragia as relics of a past identity? One fascinating possibility is that the Nuragia played a role in ritual gatherings. Some sites include wells and sacred springs nearby, hinting at water worship or fertility rites. Others have chambers aligned with celestial events, such as the rising sun at solstices. If true, these towers might have been of both political power and spiritual life, places where people gathered to connect with both the earth and the heavens. To this day, the Nuragia continue to defy easy explanation. They are recognized by UNESCO as a World Heritage Site, celebrated as unique to Sardinia. And yet, even with decades of excavation and research, no single theory has fully explained them. They remain a riddle carved in stone, a message from the Bronze Age that has not yet been translated. When night falls over Sardinia and the wind moves through the valleys, the towers take on a different presence. Standing in silence, they almost feel alive, like ancient watchers that refuse to reveal their secrets. You cannot help but wonder, what ceremonies took place here, under the stars? What voices echoed in these stone chambers? What dreams belonged to the builders whose names are now forgotten? The Nuragi are not just ruins. They are questions about human ambition, belief, and memory. And like so many of the world's great archaeological mysteries, they remind us that history is never as complete as we imagine. Sometimes the stones speak, but not loudly enough for us to understand. The Gobistan petroglyphs, rock art older than history. On the dusty plains of Azerbaijan, not far from the shores of the Caspian Sea, lies a place that feels almost like another world. It is called Gobistan, and scattered across its rocky hills are thousands of carvings, animals, humans, symbols, and scenes, etched into stone by hands that lived tens of thousands of years ago. These are the Gobistan petroglyphs, and they are among the oldest known rock art sites in the world. The carvings stretch back an almost unimaginable span of time. Some of them date to the Upper Paleolithic period, around 40,000 years ago. Others belong to the Neolithic, the Bronze Age, or even later. It is not one culture that carved them, but many, across millennia, each generation adding its mark to the same stones, and together they form a kind of library, not of words but of images. A story told in lines scratched into rock, long before writing was ever invented. At first glance, the carvings may seem simple, stick figures of humans, outlines of animals, circles, lines. But look closer and they come alive. You see hunters chasing wild goats with bows. You see dancers holding hands in what appears to be a ritual circle. You see boats carved with such precision that some scholars believe they represent early forms of seagoing vessels, perhaps used to navigate the Caspian. You see animals that no longer live in this region, lions, aurochs, wild asses, reminders of a world that has changed. What makes Gobistan so mysterious is not just the age of the carvings but their variety. Over 6,000 separate petroglyphs have been documented across some 500 different sites in the region. It is as if the land itself became a canvas for human imagination. These carvings were not casual doodles. They were deliberate, intentional, and deeply meaningful to the people who made them. But what exactly did they mean? That remains the great question. Some scholars interpret the dancing figures as part of fertility rituals, meant to bring abundance to the community. Others see the hunting scenes as both documentation and magic, a way to record events, but also perhaps a way to ensure success in future hunts. The boats are especially intriguing. because they suggest that these ancient people had a connection to the sea, long before we imagined complex navigation in this part of the world. There are also more abstract shapes, circles, spirals, and lines that seem symbolic. Were they maps, calendars, or simply expressions of human creativity? Without a written key, we can only guess. What is certain is that Gobistan was more than just a random gathering of carvings. The site was a settlement. Archaeologists have found evidence of dwellings, hearths, and even primitive musical instruments. One of the rocks, when struck, produces a deep resonant sound like a drum. It has been nicknamed the Govel Dash or tambourine stone, and it suggests that music and ritual were part of life here as well. Imagine a gathering of people, tens of thousands of years ago, dancing by firelight, as rhythms echoed across the stone. The petroglyphs may not just be records, they may be echoes of those ceremonies. The Gobistan site sits on what was once a much greener landscape. Today it is arid, but thousands of years ago the region was rich with rivers, lakes, and herds of wild animals. It was a place where humans could thrive, hunt, gather, and later herd and farm. Perhaps that is why the petroglyphs are so numerous here. It was a crossroads, a place where communities returned again and again, leaving their stories on the rocks. But here lies the mystery. For all the carvings, we still cannot fully decode the minds behind them. Why did they choose these images? Why in this particular place? Did they believe the rocks held spiritual power, acting as a bridge between humans and gods? Did they see the carvings as a way to speak to the future, to those who would come after? Or were they simply sharing moments of life, hunting, dancing, traveling, the way we might take photographs today? Even more puzzling is how similar some of Gobistan's carvings are to rock art found in other parts of the world. The boats, for instance, resemble carvings in Scandinavia made thousands of years later. The dancing figures echo rock art in Africa. Is this coincidence? Or does it suggest a kind of shared human imagination, spread across cultures and continents? Some researchers have even proposed that Gobistan might have been part of wider prehistoric migration routes, where ideas and symbols traveled as people moved. In 2007, Gobistan was declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site, recognized as one of the most important records of early human creativity. And yet walking through it today, you feel less like you are in a museum and more like you are standing in a sacred place. The carvings, weathered but still clear, seem to vibrate with a strange energy. The silence of the rocks is heavy, but not empty. It is the silence of thousands of voices layered over one another, waiting to be heard. There is something deeply humbling about Gobistan. We like to think of ourselves as modern, advanced, unique. But here we are reminded that humans have always been artists, always been storytellers, always been curious about the world around them. The people who carved these rocks lived in a world without writing, without cities, without nations. And yet they felt the same urge to leave a mark, to say, we were here, this is who we are. And in a way they succeeded. Long after their names, their languages, and even their way of life have vanished, their images remain. Hunters frozen mid-stride, dancers forever holding hands, boats sailing across a sea of stone. It is as if they reached across tens of thousands of years to whisper to us, in a language older than history. When the sun sets over Gobistan and the shadows stretch across the carved stones, the mystery only deepens. You look at the figures and you realize they are looking back, not with eyes, but with presence. They are not just pictures. They are messages, and though we may never fully understand them, they remind us of something essential, that the human story did not begin with writing or kingdoms or monuments. It began with imagination, carved in stone, the plain of jars, megaliths scattered across Laos. In the quiet highlands of northern Laos, there is a landscape unlike any other on earth. Rolling hills, thick jungles, mist that hangs low in the morning, and scattered across this land, thousands of enormous stone jars. Some lie alone, others cluster in groups of hundreds. They vary in size, from small enough for one person to move, to towering monoliths weighing several tons, and together, they form one of the most haunting and puzzling mysteries of archaeology, the Plain of Jars. At first sight, the jars look strange and almost out of place. They are carved from sandstone, limestone, and granite, shaped into cylinders with hollowed interiors. Some are plain, others are decorated with faint carvings, geometric patterns, or symbolic designs worn down by centuries of rain and wind. A few have been found with stone lids. Most are open to the sky, filled now with rainwater, leaves, or silence. The immediate question is obvious: what were they for? Why did an ancient culture carve thousands of massive jars and scatter them across the hills of Laos? Local legends offer a colorful explanation. According to one story, a race of giants once lived here. After a victorious battle, they celebrated with rice wine brewed in enormous jars, so big they could drink together from them. Another tale says the jars were used by a king to brew alcohol for his army, providing drink during long campaigns. These legends carry the flavor of myth, but behind them may lie kernels of truth. Archaeologists began studying the jars seriously in the 1930s, and what they found deepened the mystery. Inside and around the jars, they discovered fragments of human bones, teeth, and burial goods. Some jars appear to have been associated with cremations, others with inhumations. This suggests the jars were not simply storage containers or wine vats. Instead, they may have served as part of elaborate funerary rituals. One theory is that the jars were used as distilling vessels. Bodies may have been placed inside the jars, exposed to the elements until the flesh decomposed, leaving only bones behind. After this process, the remains could be removed and buried in nearby pits. In this interpretation, the jars were not for wine or grain, but for death, an intermediate stage in the journey of the soul. Another possibility is that the jars symbolized wombs, returning the dead to a kind of stone cradle before they passed into the afterlife. The rounded shapes, the hollow interiors, and their monumental presence could have carried deep symbolic meaning, representing both death and rebirth. Yet, despite decades of excavation, no single answer has been proven. The jars do not have inscriptions. They do not reveal the names of the people who carved them or the culture that made them. They stand as mute witnesses to a civilization that left no written history, only stone. Adding to the puzzle is the sheer scale of the site. The jars are spread across more than 90 separate sites, covering a vast area of northern Laos. Some sites contain a handful of jars, others hundreds. In total, archaeologists estimate there may once have been over 10,000 jars, though many have been lost or buried. To carve, transport, and position so many massive stones would have required a highly organized society with advanced knowledge of quarrying and labor coordination. And yet we do not even know what they called themselves. Dating the jars has also proven difficult. Some evidence suggests they were made around 500 BCE, while other research points to even earlier origins, perhaps as far back as 2,000 years ago. Without inscriptions or written records, the timeline remains blurry. What we do know is that the jars stood long before recorded history reached this part of Southeast Asia, and they have endured through war, weather, and time. Tragically, the Plain of Jars has also been scarred by modern history. During the Vietnam War, Laos was heavily bombed, and many areas of the Plain of Jars remain littered with unexploded ordnance to this day. This has made excavation dangerous, limiting research, and leaving much of the mystery unsolved. Even today, archaeologists must tread carefully, both literally and figuratively, when exploring the landscape. And yet, despite these challenges, the jars continue to draw attention. In 2019, the Plain of Jars was added to the UNESCO World Heritage List, recognized as one of the world's most important archaeological mysteries. The government of Laos, with international partners, works to clear ordnance and preserve the jars so future generations can study and marvel at them. Standing among them, the feeling is hard to describe. The jars are silent, but they radiate presence. They are scattered across fields and forests, like the remnants of a forgotten civilization, some lean, broken, and weathered. Others stand proud, their openings gazing skyward. They are too deliberate to be random, too massive to be trivial. Each one is a question carved in stone. Were they monuments to the dead? Were they vessels of the soul? Or were they something entirely different, something we cannot yet imagine? When the sun sets over the plain of jars, shadows lengthen, and the air cools, the jars seem to multiply in the dim light, as if the land itself is filled with ghostly silhouettes. You walk among them and feel the time, a reminder that human history is not just written in books or carved in temples, but scattered in places where we least expect it. The plain of jars is a mystery, not because we know nothing, but because we know just enough to realize how much is missing. We see the stones, the bones, the fragments, but the people themselves remain hidden. Their voices are gone, their rituals forgotten, their names erased. All that is left are the jars, massive and silent, keeping their secrets for thousands of years. Perhaps that is their true power, not as vessels of grain or wine, or even the dead, but as vessels of wonder. They remind us that human creativity has always reached beyond the practical, into the symbolic, the spiritual, the unknown. And in that way, the plain of jars is still doing its work. It is still making us ask questions, still challenging us to imagine the lives of those who came before, still keeping us awake, or perhaps gently guiding us into dreams with the mystery of stone. A Zubrik idol, Slavic god statue with 4 faces. In the quiet river valleys of Ukraine, near the Zubrik River, archaeologists and historians stumbled upon a stone figure unlike any other. It is called the Zubrik idol, a mysterious statue carved from limestone, standing over 2 meters tall, dating back to the 9th or 10th century CE. This idol is unusual not just for its age, but for its intricate design and what it may reveal about the beliefs of the ancient Slavs. The first thing that strikes anyone looking at the Zubrik idol is its faces, 4 faces carved into a single body, each looking in a different direction. One face gazes to the east, another to the west, the third to the north, and the 4th to the south. Some scholars interpret this as a symbol of omniscience, a god who watches over all directions, all corners of the world. Others suggest that it represents the 4 seasons, or perhaps the cycle of life itself, birth, life, death, and rebirth. The statue stands on a stepped base which appears to represent the 3 levels of the world according to Slavic cosmology: the underworld, the earthly realm, and the heavens above. The body of the idol is carved in layers, each showing scenes of human and divine activity. On one level you see figures of people engaging in rituals, dancing, or offering sacrifices. On another, there are representations of animals, possibly sacred to the gods, and symbols that are still debated by scholars today. What is remarkable is how much the Zubrik idol tells us, and yet how much it keeps secret. There are no inscriptions, no written explanation. Its meaning is encoded in shape, posture, and symbolism. Its craftsmanship is simple, yet deliberate, every face, every limb, every detail carefully carved. And yet for all this care, its original purpose remains uncertain. Was it a cult statue for worship, a marker of a sacred site, a symbol of political power, or something else entirely? The context in which it was found adds another layer of mystery. The idol was discovered buried, partially submerged in the river, likely during the late 19th century. Some suggest it was intentionally hidden to protect it from invaders, or to conceal pagan practices, as Christianity spread across Eastern Europe. The act of burying such an object might have been symbolic, a ritual in itself, representing the end of an era or the passage of one belief system into another. Looking closely, one notices the carvings of weapons and ritual implements in the hands of some figures. They hint at ceremonies and sacrifices, practices long forgotten. There are also depictions of animals, horses, birds, and possibly mythical creatures, which may have held spiritual significance, serving as mediators between humans and gods. Each carving is detailed enough to spark curiosity and imagination, yet cryptic enough to frustrate certainty. The Zeebrugge idol is not an isolated artifact. It is part of a wider pattern of Slavic religious art, but it stands out for its size, its craftsmanship, and the clarity of its symbolism. Comparisons are often made to other Indo-European cult statues, yet nothing else matches its four-faced design so perfectly. This uniqueness has fueled centuries of debate among historians, archaeologists, and enthusiasts of mythology. Even today, as one stands before photographs or replicas of the idol, there is a sense of silent power. Its faces seem to watch, not threatening, but observing. One can imagine the ancient peoples approaching it, offering gifts, prayers, or seeking guidance. The idol embodies the mystery of a faith that once thrived, now lost to time, yet still whispering through stone. The Zeebrugge idol also raises questions about the beliefs of the ancient Slavs. Unlike many cultures with written traditions, the Slavs relied heavily on oral history, ritual, and symbolism. The idol may encode cosmological knowledge that we can only partially reconstruct. Perhaps it served as a teaching tool, a way to explain the heavens, the seasons, and the moral order of the universe to a largely illiterate population. Or perhaps it was simply a sacred object, meant to inspire awe and reverence. One of the most fascinating aspects is how it survived at all. The river that now hides it have slowly eroded it over centuries. That it remained largely intact is a testament to both the skill of the carvers and the reverence with which it was treated. Scholars continue to debate the exact style and influences, noting both pagan motifs and hints of early Christian interaction. Could it represent a culture in transition, caught between old gods and new faiths? Today, replicas of the Zeebrugge idol stand in museums in Ukraine, allowing visitors to appreciate its scale and detail. But even as we examine it, there is a sense that we are only glimpsing part of its story. The rivers, the forests, the very air of the landscape in which it was found. These elements are lost to us. We can imagine, but cannot fully experience, the world that produced such a remarkable artifact. The Zeebrugge idol reminds us that human history is layered, complex, and often obscured. It is a window into a past that we can only partially reconstruct. Yet it speaks to universal themes, the desire to understand the world, to communicate with the divine, and to leave a mark that endures. Its four faces seem to look in every direction, watching us as much as we watch it, challenging us to ponder the mysteries of belief, artistry, and human imagination. As night falls and the stories of the past settle into shadow, the Zeebrugge idol continues to hold its silent vigil. It asks questions we cannot fully answer, yet it invites us to wonder, to imagine, and to connect with the ancient world in a way that is both intimate and profound. It is more than stone. It is a bridge across time, a reminder that even without words, humans have always sought to express, to worship, and to leave a mark on the world. The Vinca figurines, enigmatic European statues. In the heart of the Balkans, across the fertile plains of modern-day Serbia and parts of Romania, lie the remains of one of Europe's most intriguing prehistoric cultures, the Vinca civilization, flourishing around 5700 to 4500 BCE. This Neolithic society left behind an astonishing legacy of settlements, tools, pottery, and perhaps most mysterious of all, the Vinca figurines. Small statues carved from clay, stone, or bone, whose purpose continues to puzzle archaeologists to this day. At first glance, the figurines are striking. They vary in size, from mere centimeters to nearly 30 centimeters tall. Many depict human forms, often abstracted, with exaggerated features such as wide hips, pronounced eyes, or intricate markings. Others appear more symbolic or animalistic. Some have inscriptions or patterns carved into their surfaces, symbols whose meanings have yet to be deciphered. The first question that comes to mind is simple: why were these figurines made? Some scholars argue they were religious icons, possibly used in ritualistic ceremonies. Others suggest they might have served as teaching tools, illustrating social roles, clothing, or cultural myths. A few even propose they were toys, though their careful craftsmanship and symbolic complexity suggest something more profound. One particularly compelling theory is that the figurines represent a goddess-centered belief system. Many of the human figures are female, with accentuated features associated with fertility and nurturing. Some appear seated in meditative or ritualistic postures, possibly indicating ceremonial use or reverence. Could the Vinca people have worshipped a mother goddess? Did these statues serve as intermediaries between humans and the divine? The lack of written records makes definitive answers impossible, leaving us only with speculation and awe. The Vinca figurines are not merely objects of art. They are windows into a complex society. The settlements themselves were remarkably advanced for their time, with houses arranged in neat grids, clay walls reinforced with timber, and extensive pottery production. The figurines were clearly integrated into this sophisticated daily life, serving as objects that conveyed meaning, identity, or power within the community. One of the most fascinating aspects is their symbolism and abstraction. Many figurines feature geometric patterns or incisions that may represent early attempts at writing or symbolic communication. Some researchers have even speculated that the markings could encode ritual knowledge, agricultural information, or ancestral lineage. Others caution against overinterpretation, reminding us that these are objects from a culture that predates writing by millennia, and much remains lost. Examining the figurines closely, you notice that each one is different. Even within a single site, no two statues are identical. The Vinca artisans clearly valued individuality and detail. The eyes, the facial expressions, the hand placements, all suggest deliberate intention. It is as if the creators wanted each figure to tell a story, yet the language of that story has vanished. The figurines also raise questions about social hierarchy and gender in Vinca society. Why are so many female forms represented? Does this indicate matriarchal structures or a spiritual emphasis on fertility? And what of the few male figurines? They are often depicted with stylized headgear or symbolic items, suggesting roles of leadership, protection, or ritual significance. In a society without written records, these small statues may have been one of the few ways to communicate identity, status, or spiritual beliefs. The materials and craftsmanship are equally remarkable. Some are simple clay, others finely fired with intricate detailing. A few figurines are made of stone, carefully carved with tools that at first glance seem simple, but required incredible skill to produce such refined shapes. The care invested in each object implies that the Vinca people assigned significant importance to them. They were not casual decorations, but items of ritual, cultural, or spiritual weight. Despite centuries of research, the figurines remain enigmatic. Archaeologists continue to uncover new sites, unearthing hundreds more statues. Yet the central mystery persists. The Vinca culture vanished around 4500 BCE, absorbed or displaced by other emerging societies. Their beliefs, language, and societal structures disappeared with them. All that remains are these small, silent witnesses, scattered across Europe, holding secrets we may never fully understand. Some figurines even appear deliberately broken or deformed, perhaps as part of ritual destruction or to signify transition from one life stage to another. The act of breaking these objects might have been symbolic, a way to release spiritual energy, honor the dead, or mark a ceremonial event. The purpose is still debated, but it adds layers of intrigue and human connection to these artifacts. Today, the Vinca figurines are preserved in museums and collections, studied by scholars and admired by enthusiasts. Yet their true story remains elusive. They are not just artifacts. They are messengers from a forgotten civilization, bridging the gap between the present and a time over 6,000 years ago. They remind us that even in prehistoric times, humans sought meaning, connection, and expression through art and ritual. Standing before a Vinca figurine, even in a museum case, one cannot help but feel a quiet reverence. These small statues carry the weight of a vanished culture, their eyes seemingly watching, their forms echoing the values and beliefs of people long gone. They are at once familiar and alien, simple and profound, mysterious yet intimate. Perhaps their greatest power lies in their silence. They speak without words. They invite us to imagine the lives, thoughts, and ceremonies of a people we can never fully meet. They challenge us to appreciate the creativity and spirituality of early Europe, to wonder how human societies evolved, and to marvel at the continuity of human curiosity and devotion across millennia. And so the Vinca figurines remain enigmatic, beautiful, and deeply human. Each one is a tiny monument to belief, artistry, and the enduring desire to leave something meaningful behind. They are a quiet invitation to dream, to reflect, and to listen closely to the whispers of history carried in clay and stone. The Mount Tlaloc Shrine, ancient Aztec rain temple. High in the mountains of central Mexico, above the valleys and clouds, stands Mount Tlaloco, a sacred peak that has long captivated historians, archaeologists, and those intrigued by ancient civilizations. At its summit lies the remnants of an Aztec shrine, dedicated to Tlaloco, the god of rain, water, and fertility. This is not a grand pyramid or an opulent palace. Instead, it is a modest but profoundly symbolic site, carefully constructed to honor forces that shaped the very life of the Aztec people. Mount Tlaloco itself dominates the landscape, its slopes often shrouded in mist, giving it an aura of mystery even today. To ascend, it would have been no easy task for the Aztecs. The terrain is steep, rocky, and unpredictable, yet they climbed these heights for centuries, seeking to commune with the divine. Every stone at the shrine is positioned deliberately, every platform aligned to the movement of the sun, the rainfall patterns, and the sacred rituals performed there. The shrine is built of volcanic stone, locally sourced but carefully shaped and arranged. Some platforms are circular, possibly for ritual ceremonies. Others form terraces that echo the natural contours of the mountain. Archaeologists believe that the arrangement was meant to enhance the spiritual energy of the place, creating a connection between the earth below, the clouds above, and the people who climbed the slopes. Central to the shrine's significance is its association with Tlaloc, the rain god. In Aztec mythology, Tlaloc controlled the rainfall that nourished crops, replenished rivers, and sustained life. Worship at Mount Tlaloc included offerings of food, water, and sometimes more gruesome sacrifices, intended to ensure the god's favor. The Aztecs believed that by appeasing Tlaloc, they could guarantee the survival of their communities, especially during periods of drought or famine. The shrine's location is also aligned with events, particularly the solar and lunar cycles. On certain days, sunlight would illuminate specific platforms or carvings, highlighting the meticulous understanding the Aztecs had of their environment. This alignment was likely intentional, designed to synchronize religious rituals with cosmic rhythms, connecting human activity to the movements of the heavens. Archaeologists have uncovered ceramics, figurines, and ritual implements at the site, all carefully placed. Small bowls may have held offerings, while carved stone figures represented deities, priests, or symbolic creatures. Some figurines are carved with intricate facial expressions, capturing awe, devotion, or fear, emotions that the Aztecs themselves likely felt as they approached the mountain. Each artifact tells a story, yet the story is incomplete, fragmented by centuries of exposure to the elements and centuries of human absence. One of the most fascinating aspects of Mount Tlaloc is its integration with natural features. Certain boulders and rock formations appear to have been deliberately incorporated into the shrine's design. Some are carved with symbols resembling eyes, rain patterns, or abstract forms. The Aztecs may have considered these rocks to be manifestations of divine presence, natural conduits for the god's power, or sacred markers that guided ritual activities. The climb to Mount Tlaloc was itself a spiritual journey. Participants in ceremonies would ascend slowly, pausing at key points to offer prayers, chants, or small sacrifices. The physical exertion, combined with the awe-inspiring scenery, likely enhanced the sense of connection to the divine, making the journey as important as the destination. Modern visitors, hiking the same paths today, can sense this ancient energy, imagining the footsteps of those who came before them, driven by faith and the hope of rain. The shrine also raises questions about Aztec engineering and planning. Despite its remote location, the platforms and terraces were constructed with precision. Stones were quarried, transported, and fitted without modern tools, yet they remain largely intact. Water drainage was carefully managed to prevent erosion, demonstrating a practical understanding of the mountain environment, as well as spiritual knowledge. Interestingly, some carvings suggest ritual use of hallucinogenic plants. Anthropologists speculate that participants may have ingested certain substances to induce altered states of consciousness, enhancing their experience of the sacred mountain and deepening the spiritual connection with Tlaloc. These rituals would have combined sensory experience, physical exertion, and reverence, creating moments of profound communal and individual significance. Even after the fall of the Aztec Empire, Mount Tlaloc continued to inspire awe. Spanish chroniclers mentioned local legends of divine punishment, hidden treasures, and sacred ceremonies atop the peak. Over the centuries, erosion, landslides, and human activity have altered the shrine, yet its spiritual and cultural impact remains tangible. Today, archaeologists carefully study Mount Tlaloc, documenting its terraces, platforms, and artifacts. Each discovery adds to our understanding of Aztec religion, ritual practice, and cosmology. Yet despite centuries of research, many mysteries remain. The full extent of its ceremonies, the specific meanings of symbols, and the experiences of participants are beyond our grasp. The mountain keeps some secrets, holding them in mist, stone, and memory. Mount Tlaloc teaches us that ancient people were deeply attuned to their environment, blending the practical with the spiritual. The shrine is not just a collection of stones. It is a map of belief, a record of human devotion, and a testament to a civilization's desire to influence forces far beyond their control. The rain that falls upon the mountains today is a reminder of that connection, a reminder that humans have always looked to the sky, asking, hoping, and seeking to understand their place in the world. As the sun sets behind the mountain peaks, casting long shadows across the terraces, it is easy to imagine the Aztec priests performing ceremonies, chanting to Tlaloc, and watching the clouds gather in anticipation of rain. The shrine is a bridge between earth and sky, between the mundane and the sacred, and between us and the voices of the past. Mount Tlaloc remains a silent, weathered witness. Its stones, carvings, and terraces invite reflection, awe, and a sense of human continuity. They remind us that even thousands of years ago, people sought to understand the forces of nature, to communicate with powers beyond their control, and to leave behind monuments that would endure long after their time. The mountain, the shrine, and the rain all tell a story of devotion, ingenuity, and the enduring human spirit. The Templo Mayor offering strange objects buried beneath Mexico City. Beneath the bustling streets of modern Mexico City, hidden under layers of concrete, asphalt, and centuries of urban life, lies a world that tells a story of devotion, ritual, and mystery. The Templo Mayor, the grand temple of the Aztec capital, Tenochtitlan. Excavations over the past century have revealed astonishing discoveries. Not only the monumental ruins of the temple itself, but also the strange offerings and objects buried in its sacred precincts. These offerings hint at beliefs, practices, and objects that are difficult for us to fully comprehend today. The Templo Mayor was the spiritual and ceremonial heart of Tenochtitlan, the Aztec capital founded on an island in Lake Texcoco. Rising majestically above the city, the temple was dedicated primarily to Huitzilopochtli, the god of war and the sun, and Tlaloc, the god of rain and fertility. In order to honor these deities, the Aztecs conducted elaborate ceremonies that often involved the deposition of offerings. These offerings were diverse, sometimes everyday items, sometimes highly unusual objects. Archaeologists have uncovered ceramic figurines, miniature tools, shells, golden jade pieces, and even obsidian blades intricately shaped and polished. Each object carries significance, a symbolic message or act of devotion, yet many are so mysterious that their purpose is still debated. One particularly curious aspect of these offerings is their sheer variety and apparent symbolism. Some objects resemble miniature humans or animals, others are abstract shapes that defy easy categorization. Scholars suggest that these might represent deities, ancestors, or supernatural forces. The arrangement of these objects was deliberate. They were often buried in ritual pits within the temple's foundations, sometimes accompanied by animal remains or human figurines. A striking feature of the Templo Mayor offerings is the scale and craftsmanship. Obsidian blades, for example, were sharpened to microscopic precision, reflecting both utility and ritual significance. Some ceramic figurines display astonishing detail, facial expressions, clothing, and even postures were rendered with care. These objects were more than mere decorations. They were imbued with spiritual energy and intended to communicate with the divine. Some of the offerings are intentionally broken or deformed. Archaeologists believe this act might have been symbolic, perhaps representing the transformation of objects from the material world to the spiritual. Breaking, bending, or reshaping an offering may have been seen as a necessary step to activate its sacred power. Each ritual act, each placement, and each burial speaks to a complex spiritual system that guided Aztec life. The Templo Mayor also contains huge caches of greenstone, jade, and turquoise, materials considered sacred and associated with life, fertility, and the gods. These objects were laboriously crafted, transported, and carefully placed, reflecting both artistic mastery and religious devotion. Their presence shows the lengths to which the Aztecs would go to honor their gods and ensure the balance of cosmic forces. Archaeologists have been fascinated by some of the stranger objects found here. Some resemble miniature skulls or abstract animal forms, and a few even defy easy interpretation. Could these have been offerings to unknown gods? Were they symbolic of natural forces, or tools in ritual magic? The absence of written explanations leaves us only with observation, careful measurement, and speculation. The ritual pits themselves are carefully constructed. Many are lined with stone or clay, and some are located in areas of the temple aligned with celestial events, such as solstices or equinoxes. This suggests a profound understanding of astronomy and cosmology, integrated with religious practice. Every object, every placement, Every burial had meaning, a carefully orchestrated communication between the human and the divine. Some of the most intriguing offerings include ceramic vessels filled with miniature figurines or tiny symbolic items. These might have been intended as representations of entire communities, or as symbolic gifts to the gods, encapsulating hopes, fears, and prayers. The Aztecs were meticulous in these rituals, understanding that their actions would influence everything from rainfall to harvests, and even the favor of deities in warfare. Even human remains were part of these offerings. Skeletons and bones, often accompanied by objects, indicate sacrificial practices, designed to honor the gods and maintain cosmic order. The combination of human and non-human offerings reflects a worldview in which all things, animals, objects, humans and spirits were interconnected and capable of influencing the balance of the universe. Exploring the Templo Mayor offerings today, archaeologists and visitors are struck by the sheer density and variety of objects. Layer upon layer of ceremonial deposits reveal centuries of devotion. Despite the passage of time, these offerings retain an aura of mystery and power. They are silent messages, buried beneath the modern city, waiting to tell their story to those who listen carefully. The location of Mexico City adds another layer of fascination. The city rests atop the ruins of Tenochtitlan, and each excavation feels like peeling back layers of time. Beneath streets, subway lines, and modern buildings lie remnants of one of the most sophisticated and enigmatic civilizations in the Americas. The Templo Mayor and its offerings are not just archaeological finds. They are portals into the minds, hearts, and spiritual lives of the Aztecs. Modern technology has helped uncover new aspects of these offerings. Ground-penetrating radar, 3D imaging, and meticulous excavation techniques reveal patterns previously unseen. Certain pits show repetitive arrangements of objects, suggesting ritual choreography, where items were placed according to precise rules and symbolism. The deeper researchers look, the more they realize how much we have yet to understand. Perhaps the most powerful aspect of the Templo Mayor offerings is the sense of human connection they evoke. Each figurine, each blade, each tiny vessel represents an individual's act of devotion, hope, or fear. They remind us that even thousands of years ago, humans grappled with the mysteries of nature, the unpredictability of life, and the desire to communicate with forces beyond their control. And so, beneath the streets of Mexico City, the Templo Mayor continues to whisper. Its offerings remain silent but potent, waiting to be understood. They speak of devotion, artistry, and the enduring human quest to connect with something larger than ourselves. Each object is a testament to belief, creativity, and the mysterious, ever-present longing to bridge the gap between the earthly and the divine. Even today, walking among the ruins, one can imagine the ceremonies, priests chanting, offerings placed in sacred pits, the city around the temple alive with activity. The objects themselves seem to hold memories, capturing fragments of Aztec thought and emotion, allowing us, millennia later, to glimpse a world that once flourished and then vanished, leaving behind mystery in stone and clay. The mystery of Gunungkawi, rock-cut shrines in Bali. Nestled deep in the lush valleys of Bali, Indonesia, amidst the whispering rivers and towering rice terraces, lies Gunungkawi, an extraordinary archaeological site that seems to emerge from the very rock itself. Here, carved into cliffs that rise sharply from the riverbed, are a series of ancient shrines, cut directly into the volcanic stone. These are not typical temples built with bricks or timber. Instead, each shrine appears to grow from the cliff face, as if the mountain itself had decided to take on sacred form. The site is believed to date back to the 11th century, during the era of the Balinese kings, though precise records are sparse. Gunungkawi is comprised of 10 rock-cut shrines, some nearly 7 meters high, and a collection of smaller carved niches. Each monument has been carefully shaped and positioned, demonstrating an understanding of both architecture and symbolism that continues to fascinate historians and travelers alike. Accessing these shrines requires a journey down a long path, flanked by rice terraces, with the Pecurson River meandering below. The descent is gradual, calming, and immersive, and it provides an opportunity to take in the surrounding landscape, tropical forests, small waterfalls, and the quiet hum of nature. For the Balinese, this journey itself is part of the spiritual experience connecting the pilgrim to the sacred energy of the valley. The shrines are carved in a style that blends natural contours with geometric precision. Rectangular niches, vertical grooves, and polished faces coexist with the rough texture of untouched rock. Some scholars believe these shrines were created to honor King Anak-Wangsu of the Udayana dynasty, along with his family members, serving as funerary monuments or commemorative sites. The exact purpose, however, remains uncertain. Guanghua Sui's shrines are remarkable for their sheer scale and workmanship. Carving these massive structures directly from the rock would have required skill, patience, and a deep knowledge of stone properties. Yet the tools available at the time were rudimentary: chisels, hammers, and simple abrasives. How the ancient Balinese accomplished such precision, while maintaining symmetry and proportion, remains a question that continues to intrigue archaeologists. The location of Guanghua Sui is no accident. The shrines face east, aligned with the rising sun, and are surrounded by verdant rice terraces and rivers, symbolizing fertility and life. Water, which flows continuously at the base of the cliffs, may have held spiritual significance, possibly representing the flow of life, purification, or connection to the divine. It's easy to imagine the gentle sound of the river mingling with the chants of priests, filling the valley with a serene, meditative atmosphere. Some carvings are elaborately adorned, while others are more austere, suggesting a hierarchy or differentiation in importance. The largest shrines likely honored royalty, while smaller ones could have been dedicated to family members, servants, or attendants. The balance between grandeur and simplicity adds to the mystery of the site, highlighting both human devotion and the delicate relationship between man and nature. Visitors today are struck by the tranquil energy of Gunung Kawi. The climb down the terraces, the soft rustle of leaves, and the distant bird song create a sense of stepping back in time. It is easy to imagine pilgrims arriving centuries ago, bearing offerings of flowers, rice, and incense, moving slowly and reverently toward the shrines. Each step is a reminder of the enduring human desire to connect with something beyond ourselves, to leave a mark on the world that survives long after our lives end. Despite its beauty, Gunung Kawi raises questions about the ancient Balinese culture. How did they achieve such precise and monumental rock-cut structures without advanced machinery? What rituals were conducted here, and what did the shrines mean to those who built them? Some suggest that the alignment with the river, sun, and terraces may have encoded complex cosmological knowledge, blending astronomy, spirituality, and governance. Artifacts found near the site, fragments of pottery, small stone carvings, and ceremonial objects hint at the daily life and spiritual practices of the people who frequented Gunung Kawi. The shrines were not just monuments. They were centers of activity, places where the sacred and the mundane intertwined. Here, kings, priests, and commoners alike could participate in rituals that reinforced social cohesion, honored ancestors, and sought the favor of the divine. The experience of Gunung Kawi is as much about immersion in nature as it is about history. Sunlight filters through the trees, highlighting carved surfaces and casting intricate shadows. Mist rises from the river at dawn, giving the cliffs an ethereal glow. The surrounding landscape, terraced fields, flowing water, and distant mountains, amplifies the sense that these shrines were deliberately designed to be part of a living, breathing environment. Even today, scholars debate the chronology, purpose, and methods of construction. Some argue for a royal funerary function. Others see Gunung Kawi as a site of broader religious significance, linked to fertility, water, and agricultural cycles. Yet despite these theories, the site retains an air of mystery, refusing to be fully explained. The shrines silently tell stories of devotion, ingenuity, and reverence for both the human and natural world. Gunung Kawi stands as a bridge between time and space, connecting us to a civilization that revered nature, honored ancestors, and sought to create lasting monuments in stone. Every groove, niche, and terrace speaks of patience, purpose, and the delicate balance between human ambition and the environment. As the sun dips below the horizon, casting long shadows across the valley, it's easy to imagine the ancient ceremonies, the soft chants, the offerings, and the respectful silence of those who climbed the terraces to reach these sacred spaces. The shrines are not just historical artifacts. They are living reminders of the human desire to reach toward the divine, to carve meaning directly from the mountain itself. Gunung Kawi remains a place of quiet wonder, an invitation to reflect on the connection between past and present, stone and spirit, nature and human devotion. It reminds us that some mysteries endure, not to be solved completely, but to be experienced, appreciated, and pondered across centuries. The Moabite stone, ancient biblical inscription in the rugged hills of modern-day Jordan, among arid landscapes and scattered ruins, lies a relic that quietly bridges the worlds of archaeology, history, and the biblical narrative, the Moabite stone, also known as the Mesha stellate. This artifact, carved from black basalt over 2,800 years ago, is more than just an inscription. It is a message frozen in stone. A record of kings, battles, and the worldview of the ancient Moabite kingdom. The stone was discovered in 1868 in the ruins of Deben, the ancient city of Deben, which was the capital of Moab. Standing nearly a meter tall and carved with carefully etched letters, the stellate is a remarkable example of early Semitic writing. Its text records the victories of King Mesha of Moab against the kingdom of Israel, as well as his devotion to the Moabite god Kamesha. Holding the Moabite stone in one's imagination, one can almost picture the king himself, standing on a hill, declaring his triumphs, and commissioning artisans to carve his words into the basalt. This was a deliberate act, meant to preserve memory, claim legitimacy, and communicate divine favor. Every line, every symbol, was carefully chosen to convey a story of power and faith. The inscription is notable not only for its historical content, but also for its writing. Each character is carved with precision, suggesting the scribe had a mastery over both form and language. The Moabite script is closely related to early Hebrew, which gives scholars a unique window into the linguistic, cultural, and political interactions of the Levant in the 9th century BCE. As modern archaeologists and linguists study the stele, they uncover layers of information. The text mentions cities, conquests, and alliances, painting a picture of a turbulent era in which kingdoms vied for survival and power. The Moabite stone serves as an extraordinary corroboration of certain biblical events, while also offering perspectives absent from biblical texts. It shows the world through the eyes of a king who was both devout and politically astute. One of the most compelling aspects of the Moabite stone is the personal voice of King Mesha. He does not merely list victories, he attributes his success to his god, Chemosh, and records how offerings, sacrifices, and divine guidance ensured Moab's survival. This intertwining of religion and politics gives modern readers insight into how the Moabites understood their place in the cosmos and their dependence on both human skill and divine favor. The physical stone itself is remarkable. Black basalt, dense and heavy, was not easy to work with, yet the letters are clear and legible. Scholars marvel at the precision and care taken by the artisans, who had no advanced chisels or modern tools. They relied on rudimentary hammers and chisels, and yet the result has endured for nearly 3 millennia, defying the wear of time and the elements. When examining the text, one notices the structure and flow. Moshe begins with his rise to power, then narrates military campaigns, victories, and subjugation of neighboring peoples. The stele also details the restoration of towns and altars, showing a concern not only for conquest but for the continuity of religious and civic life. These details hint at a sophisticated bureaucracy with records, planning, and a sense of historical consciousness far more complex than one might assume for a small kingdom in that era. The Moabite stone also reveals religious practices that have largely disappeared from collective memory. King Moshe frequently emphasizes offerings, sacrifices, and dedications to Chemosh. Certain passages describe rituals to secure favor in battle, including the offering of spoils or symbolic acts of devotion. These lines are not merely ceremonial. They reflect a worldview in which human action and divine will were inseparable. Modern scholars have spent decades deciphering the text, comparing it to biblical accounts, and analyzing its historical context. While some parts are clear, others are fragmented, and a few lines remain enigmatic, leaving room for interpretation and debate. This uncertainty adds to the stone's allure, a silent witness to history that still holds secrets, inviting exploration, conjecture, and imagination. Another fascinating element is the stone's dramatic history after its discovery. Shortly after unearthing it in 1868, the stele was broken into pieces during political and religious disputes. The fragments were scattered, and only part of original inscriptions survived. Today, most of these fragments are preserved in the Louvre Museum, with a few remaining in Jordan. Despite its fragmentation, the Moabite stone continues to speak across centuries, its message enduring even in pieces. The Moabite stone challenges modern perceptions of ancient history. It is evidence that small kingdoms, often overlooked in grand narratives, could wield influence, maintain records, and engage in complex political and religious activities. It is a reminder that history is not solely written by empires, but also by those who carved their lives, victories, and devotion into stone. Standing before the Moabite stone in imagination, one can almost hear the voices of scribes, the echo of hammers on basalt, and the proud declaration of a king who wanted to ensure that his story, his victories, and his devotion to Chemosh would survive the ages. Every line, every letter, is a testament to human ambition, faith, and the desire to leave a lasting mark. Even today, the stele continues to provoke curiosity. Scholars, tourists, and casual observers alike are drawn to it, pondering the political struggles, religious devotion, and personal ambition embedded within its inscriptions. The stone invites us to reflect not only on the history of Moab, but also on the universal human desire to be remembered, to carve meaning and permanence from the fleeting nature of life. In essence, the Moabite stone is more than an artifact. It is a bridge between the past and the present, a silent chronicle of a world long gone, and a mystery that continues to whisper across the centuries. Its text, etched into cold basalt, speaks of kings, gods, victories, and devotion. It reminds us that even the smallest kingdoms can leave timeless messages for the future, waiting for those who take the time to read, imagine, and wonder. The Sanai Maruyama site, Japan's ancient pit houses in the northern part of Japan's Honshu Island, near the verdant plains of Aomori Prefecture, lies an archaeological treasure that transports us back nearly 5,500 years. This is the Sanai Maruyama site, one of the largest and most important settlements of Japan's Jomon period, a time when people lived in harmony with nature, long before the advent of rice farming or written records. Walking through the reconstructed site today, it is easy to feel a quiet connection to the past. The settlement stretches across a vast area, revealing the footprints of a society that thrived in pit houses, longhouses, and elevated structures. These dwellings, often dug into the earth, were modest yet ingeniously designed. They provided warmth in harsh winters, shelter from rains, and a comfortable space for families to live, cook, and craft. The pit houses themselves are fascinating. Circular or oval depressions, each carefully dug and lined with wooden posts, often had hearths in the center. Imagine a family gathering around the fire, the soft crackle of burning wood filling the air, while the wind outside whispers through the tall grass. Life here was slow, deliberate, and intimately tied to the natural rhythms of the environment. Archaeologists have uncovered a wealth of artifacts at Sinai Murayama. Pottery fragments, some decorated with intricate chord patterns, tell stories of daily life and artistic expression. Stone tools, finely polished axes, and hunting implements reveal a society skilled in woodworking, fishing, and hunting. The sheer variety and sophistication of these artifacts suggest that Sinai Murayama was a cultural hub, not a simple village, where innovation, craft, and community flourished. One of the most remarkable discoveries is the Longhouse, a structure that may have served as a communal space for gatherings, rituals, or ceremonies. Measuring more than 30 meters in length, it stands as a testament to the organizational skills of Jamin people, who could coordinate construction on such a scale without formalized government or written plans. The Longhouse speaks of collaboration, of communities working together, and of human ingenuity, harnessed in a time we often underestimate. The site also reveals early examples of ritual spaces, where evidence suggests ceremonies connected to fertility, hunting, and the natural world took place. Buried offerings, arranged stones, and carefully placed artifacts hint at spiritual practices, showing that the Jamin people not only survived but sought to understand and honor the world around them. These rituals remind us that human curiosity and devotion to something greater have deep roots, stretching back thousands of years. Sinai Murayama is remarkable, not only for its scale and artifacts but also for its preservation. The soil and environmental conditions allowed wooden structures, pottery, and even some organic materials to survive for millennia. Each artifact, each post hole, and each hearth tells a story of everyday life, of cooking, crafting, socializing, and worshiping, frozen in time, yet resonating with the rhythms of life we know today. One of the intriguing aspects of Sinai Murayama is the insight it provides into community planning and environmental adaptation. Houses were arranged with thought to water flow, wind direction, and sunlight, showing a profound understanding of sustainable living. The people of Sinai Murayama did not merely survive. They thrived in a way that respected the land, forming a society that was both resilient and harmonious. Walking mentally through this ancient settlement, one can imagine the gentle hum of life, the chatter of families, the laughter of children, the careful movements of craftsmen, and the ritual chants of spiritual leaders. The pit houses, though simple, create a rhythm of existence that feels familiar, even in the vast distance of 5,500 years. Artifacts like Jamin figurines, sometimes called dogo, have been found scattered throughout the site. These small, often humanoid clay figures are adorned with patterns and shapes whose purpose is still debated. Were they religious symbols, protective charms, or artistic expression? Their presence hints at a society deeply reflective, one that explored meaning and symbolism alongside daily survival. The scale of Sinai Murayama also challenges assumptions about prehistoric societies. Here was a community large enough to support hundreds, perhaps thousands of inhabitants. It required cooperation, trade, resource management, and shared cultural norms. And yet there are no written records. Everything we know comes from what remains in the soil, the artifacts, and the careful reconstruction of post holes and hearths. Life at Sinai Mariama was intimately tied to nature. The Jaman people relied on rivers, forests, and coastal resources. Fishing, hunting, gathering, and primitive agriculture provided sustenance. Seasonal changes dictated movement, ritual timing, and social organization. Every artifact, from pottery to tools, reflects this dynamic relationship with the environment, showing a society that understood balance, timing, and adaptation. Even today, walking through reconstructions of pit houses or longhouses, the rhythm of life emerges. One can almost hear the crackle of a fire, smell the smoke mingling with the scent of freshly harvested grain, and see artisans carefully shaping stone tools or decorating pottery. This is not just history. It is a living meditation on the human experience, quiet, reflective, and enduring. Sinai Mariama challenges us to reconsider our definitions of civilization. Complexity, culture, and spiritual depth existed long before written records or monumental stone architecture. The people here were not primitive in spirit. They were thoughtful, creative, and deeply connected to the world around them. Their pit houses, artifacts, and ritual spaces are enduring evidence of human ingenuity. As the sun sets over the plains of Almori, casting long shadows across the reconstructed settlement, it is easy to feel a sense of calm and connection. The echoes of thousands of years reverberate softly, reminding us that human curiosity, devotion, and creativity are timeless. Every artifact, every post hole, every hearth, speaks not only of survival but of the desire to shape meaning, to leave a mark, and to understand the world in which they lived. Sinai Mariama remains one of Japan's most extraordinary windows into prehistory. It is a place where archaeology, anthropology, and imagination converge, offering insights into a world both alien and familiar. For those who wander mentally through its pit houses and longhouses, it becomes clear the past is not silent. It whispers, teaches, and endures, inviting us to walk slowly, observe closely, and wonder deeply about the lives of those who came before. Thank you so much for watching. See y'all in the next video. If you like my channel, like and subscribe.